Okay, we're in. Okay, great. Okay, hello everyone. How is everyone feeling this evening? Good, it's almost Friday. Okay, so today I will be talking about inclusive design for a digital world. I want to thank A11y Tokyo for having me here. Very honored to be here today and very happy to be in Japan for the first time. So thank you all for being here too. Give it up for yourselves. So how many folks here know what A11y means? By a show of hands? All right, not everybody in the room knows what A11y means. So A11y is a numeronym, and that is because there are 11 characters between the A and the Y. So it's A11y, sometimes it's called ally. So, you know, you're making sure that you're accompanying people on their way to make things more accessible. So I wanted to start with designing with accessibility in mind. And on the screen, I have the logo for the A11y NYC meetup. So I want to talk to you all about how I got into accessibility in the first place. It was one day I woke up and I said, I want to make the world a more accessible place. So what do you do when you want to find out something? You Google it, right? So I went to Google and I looked up accessibility and I looked up design because at the time I was a UX designer. So I found this meetup and I went to my first meeting. And at that meeting, I met two individuals who were blind. And we went to a happy hour after the meeting. I don't actually remember what the meeting was about, but I do remember this conversation I'm about to tell you. So we are sitting and talking, and they asked me, what do you do for a living? And I said, I'm a UX designer. Does everybody in here know what a UX designer is in the room? Well, I described it as I'm a person who makes websites more usable. And at the time, I was doing some user research and e-commerce work. And Nefertiti, who is one of the people who I was talking to, asked me a very powerful question that actually changed the course of my life. And she asked me, do people like you think about people like me? Meaning, do people who are designers think about people like me who are blind? And I sat in silence for a moment because I knew what the answer was. The answer was no. In my trainings as a UX designer, there was one slide on accessibility. As I worked as a UX designer, we never talked about accessibility. So when I told her no, it broke everything in my heart to say that. But I made a promise that I've kept ever since. I said, we don't, but I said, I will make sure anything that I do in the future, we will. And that's what got me on the road to learning about accessibility, teaching accessibility. Because I started speaking about accessibility, that's how I got the opportunity to write a book. And I never in a million years would have expected that I'm here today based off of me going and Googling something, going to a meeting, meeting Nefertiti, having her ask that question that changed my life. So I want to first talk about ableism. Is anyone in the room familiar with this term, ableism? So ableism is discrimination and social prejudice against people with disabilities or who are perceived to have disabilities. Ableism characterizes persons as defined by their disabilities and as inferior to the non-disabled. Ableism is systematic, the institutional devaluing of bodies and minds deemed deviant, abnormal, defective, subhuman, less than. Ableism is violence. So questions to ask as you're working on things are, do you include people with disabilities in your design process? Are your design solutions intended to be used by your future self? We all get older. We all get older, right? And does your product promote an inclusive language? This comes from Dr. Leslie Ann Knoll. She has a set of cards for designers called the Designer's Critical Alphabet. And this provides a lot of good questions to ask as you're working on projects. So some things you can consider to do in order to combat ableism is respect people with disabilities and their decisions. Double check your own actions, words, and thoughts. Call out ableism when it happens and make it clear that it's not okay. Prompt accessibility in communities, workplaces, schools, hospitals, and other places. Hold organizations and politicians accountable, and fight for an inclusive society because it makes things better for all of us at the end of the day. So Japan passed the Elimination of Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Act in 2013 to prohibit disability-based discrimination. Are folks aware of that in the room? Well, now you know. It's good. So the law requires government agencies to provide reasonable accommodations if they get requests from people with disabilities. So private sector organizations will be required to do that as well. So inclusive design. Do folks know what this means? Anybody in the room? I'm sorry, I'm a professor, so I do call be like you. Do people know what this means, inclusive design? Okay, I can ask 5 different people and you'll all give me a different definition and they're probably all right. So just so you know, there isn't one definition for inclusive design. So inclusive design means creating things that everyone can use and enjoy, no matter who they are or how they are different. It's like making something that works well for all kinds of people, no matter their abilities or disabilities. So think of it this way. Imagine you are making a game. Inclusive design would mean thinking about how different people might want to play the game. Some people might have trouble seeing, so you would make sure the game has big and clear text or symbols. Others might have trouble hearing, so you would include subtitles or captions so they can understand what's happening. Some people might have trouble moving their hands, so you can make sure the game can be played with different controls like buttons or gestures. So inclusive design is about considering all these differences and making sure that everyone can have a good experience. It's like inviting everyone to join in and have fun, no matter who they are or what challenges they may have. By designing inclusively, we make sure that nobody feels left out and that everyone can participate and create the things we create and enjoy the things we create. So let's talk about content. How many folks in the room work with web design, web content? All of them, mostly everyone in the room. Okay, awesome. So one thing with content, I think it's the most important part of what we work with, right? So use clear and understandable language, symbols, and instructions to facilitate comprehension. Provide alternative formats such as text alternatives for images, captions for videos, or audio descriptions for visual content to ensure that information is accessible to users with different sensory abilities. There's a chapter in my book, chapter 3, that's titled, "If it's annoying, it's probably not accessible." Does anyone in the room find anything on the web annoying? Yes, could you tell me what you find annoying? And I'll just repeat it. You find when the font is too small. It's annoying. Yeah, so when the font is too small, it's super annoying. So I had a person who's my friend who has low vision read this particular chapter of the book. And when she read it, she says, I think it's good. But what people need to understand who are not disabled is that when something like a small font is annoying for you, it's impossible for somebody with low vision to read it at all, which means this is preventing them from doing that thing that they want to do, right? This could be something important, right? Life-changing that they're trying to do and they can't do it. It goes beyond annoying and it goes to being a major inconvenience and life-changing potentially, or life-altering in a negative way. So things that most people find annoying on the web are, like I said, nearly impossible for folks with disabilities to complete. So compliance and accessibility, this is a hot topic because compliance is something that happens and it's different everywhere. Japan has different regulations than the United States. The United States has different regulations than the EU, although the EU is about to have some major changes with accessibility as well. So you want to familiarize yourself with the accessibility standards and guidelines, such as the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, the WCAG, for digital interfaces or building codes for physical spaces. These standards provide specific criteria and best practice to ensure accessibility. Incorporate these guidelines into the design process to address accessibility requirements. Is anyone in the room familiar with the WCAG? Web Content Accessibility? Yeah, of course you are. So Japan's web accessibility standards are based on the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. The specific web accessibility regulation in Japan is the Japanese Industrial Standards, the JIS X8341-3, which requires compliance with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So when we think about building a vision for the future, let's talk about design strategies for accessibility. So here I have an image of kids who are waiting to get to a school on a very snowy day. And there is a person who is shoveling the snow. A group of kids is waiting, including someone in a wheelchair. And so the person in the wheelchair says, could you please shovel the ramp? And the person shoveling says, all these other kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through shoveling them off, then I will clear the ramp for you. And the person in the wheelchair says, but if you shovel the ramp, we can all get in. So what I'd like you to do now is you're going to talk to your neighbor about what this means to you. For folks on Zoom, maybe you could type something in the chat. What does this mean? Let's just take a few minutes, take like 3-4 minutes. What does this mean? What does this mean? Don't be shy to talk to the person next to you. I'll come and talk to you. All right. So I would really like to hear someone's thoughts. If anyone would care to share, I can pass the mic to you, or you can pass the mic. Anybody care to share their thoughts? Come on, somebody has to. You were all just talking like a minute ago. No one can see you. Everybody's still looking at me on the Zoom, so it's just people in the room. Come on. Just one per, thank you.
So we said that, so we have a default mindset, what should be prioritized and what should come first and what should come after. And also like, so in this case, like people think that clearing the stairs should be prioritized because that's a default mindset, but actually clearing the ramp would make it fast. Like it's most efficient for all of them, but it doesn't come to their mind because they have this like mindset like ingrained, if that's clear.
It's totally clear. It goes back to kind of our technical difficulties. It goes back to our mindset, right? We either have a fixed mindset where it doesn't change, or we have a growth mindset where things change. And so when you're working in digital and when you're working with accessibility, you have to have a growth mindset. You have to be able to be open and growing, right? And not be fixed like this is the only way. I've said in the past that the one way you know things are not really good is when people say we've always done it this way. If somebody's saying we've always done it this way, they have a fixed mindset. They're not really having a growth mindset. This is just my opinion, not facts. Yeah. Anyone else? Thoughts? So fun story. I worked for a very big e-commerce company in my past life. And I showed this in a meeting with the marketing team in order to try to get them to understand why we needed to add alternative text to our images, because it was an important thing. They didn't really understand accessibility. And when people don't understand something, they tend to be very resistant to opening up to it. So I thought this was a really good way to showcase how accessibility really benefits us all. How many people in the room text message? Anybody here send text messages? I would think it was everybody, yes, right? And text messaging was created in the 90s for people who are deaf. And yet we all benefit from it, right? So many things that have been made for accessibility purposes actually benefit us all. Like you see it everywhere. So here are some tips for accessibility. So for those who work in the web, you want to use proper headings. So this means organizing content with headings like H1, H2, etc., to create a clear structure and facilitate navigation for individuals using screen readers or other assistive technologies. So this past semester, I teach user experience design at New York University, and I have an ongoing project that is a NASA project. And the project is to make the Eclipse accessible for people who are blind or low vision. And part of this project is that my students work with Arisa Labs on this NASA project to make this website accessible. This past semester, my students had to work to try to make an accessible map. If anybody who has worked on accessibility and maps, they're hard. It's tough. My students were very challenged. And one of the biggest things that they learned about was information architecture and using proper headings, right? And making sure that the flow of things worked well, because they really, for the first time, my students had to think about how someone might access a web page only using a keyboard or only using a screen reader, and how they would access that. And it was very difficult for their mind to shift because they're so used to using a mouse. But if you're not using a mouse, which not everybody does, you have to think about how someone is going to navigate a page. So you want to add labels to form fields. So this means providing descriptive labels for form fields to assist users in understanding their purpose and providing input, especially for individuals who rely on screen readers or other assistive technologies like your glasses. People don't think about that. People don't think about their glasses or contacts as assistive tech. But so many people, when they get up in the morning, the first thing they do is grab their glasses. That is your assistive technology. It has become so seamless for you. And that's how all assistive technology really should be, right? I think this, again, is just my opinion. I'd love to see us have more assistive technology in our day-to-day life as smooth as our glasses. Check color contrast. So use a color contrast checker to ensure that text and interactive elements have sufficient contrast against the background, making content readable for individuals with visual impairments. Color contrast still remains the #1 issue for accessibility on the web. I don't know how. But for the designers in the room, please know that this is a big design issue. Also, for designers in the room, you should know that 67% of accessibility errors happen in design. This is according to a DQ survey. So that's quite a large number of accessibility errors, in part because so many designers are not trained to understand what accessibility is. They just make things look really nice. So provide video descriptions and closed captioning. Describe the content of videos for individuals with visual impairments, and provide closed captioning or subtitles for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. Choose inclusive drop-down menus. So select drop-down menus that are accessible and usable for all users, including those who navigate with the keyboard or assistive technologies. Frankly, I think it's a really good exercise for design teams to think about just navigating with a keyboard. Like, what does that mean? Because again, people you don't think that way. And in order to incorporate accessibility in, you really have to shift your thinking. I tell my students design is a way of thinking, so you just incorporate accessibility into that. You want to test web pages with a keyboard. So ensure that all interactive elements and functionalities can be accessed and operated using only a keyboard, as some individuals may not be able to use a mouse or other pointing devices. Test pages with assistive technologies on mobile and desktop. How many people here are familiar with mobile accessibility? Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm actually thinking about making my next semester's class just mobile accessibility because I think it's going to be fun and a good learning process. So you want to evaluate the accessibility and usability of your web pages using various assistive technologies on both mobile and desktop devices to ensure a consistent and accessible experience across platforms. And this is very important for images. So you want to add descriptive alternative text to images. Don't do like some people have been doing on Twitter and adding the wrong things. You want to really describe what the image is. So provide alternative text, alt text, for images that convey the purpose or meaning of the image, allowing individuals using screen readers to understand the content when images cannot be displayed. So thinking beyond the web, do I have any folks here who work in augmented reality or virtual reality? Yes? Who? Somebody in the room? Okay, there's one person. Two, me. So I'll briefly talk about this. So XR stands for extended reality, which includes augmented reality and virtual reality. this week, Apple made a big announcement. Did anybody see it? What did you think? Well, we could discuss that later. So my current research is about inclusive and accessible extended reality. So my focus currently is on creating a set of heuristics, one for augmented reality, one for virtual reality, because a lot of folks don't actually know how to incorporate accessibility into their process. So my research team is interviewing developers and designers in order to understand what their workflow is like. And then we're going to see how we can incorporate accessibility into that workflow. So far we've done a little over 20 interviews. I want to get to 50 interviews. And over the summer, I have a small team of 4 who's helping me move this research along. And so hopefully we'll have something soon that will be public facing for you all to see. So embracing accessibility benefits individuals and businesses by reaching a larger audience, including people with disabilities and the aging population. So the numbers for disability are 1 in 6 in the world. So for every 1 in 6 people have a disability. That number increased because of the pandemic. Oh, and this is my book that just got translated into Japanese, and I put a QR code link to the Amazon. I am so honored when I got the email saying that my book's done all right. Like, so they wanted to translate it. My mind was just blown. I want to thank my research assistant, Janavi Patel, for helping me make a lot of updates to this book. And yeah, I want to thank you all for your time today. I think that is all I have. Thank you very much. Oh, but now it's Q&A time.
はい、レジネさんありがとうございました。では、質疑応答の時間を少し取りたいと思います。まず会場の皆さんからご質問のある方いらっしゃいましたら、遠慮なく手を挙げてください。マイクを持っていきますので、ぜひ質問を聞かせてください。はい、じゃあ、あとマイクをもう1本用意しますね。もう一回手を挙げてください。じゃあまず、1人目、2人目、3人目でいきましょうか。じゃあ一番後ろの方からまず。でそれで、皆さんにお願いしたいのが、字幕、日本語か英語かで切り替えなければいけないので、最初に日本語か英語か教えてください。
じゃあ日本語でお願いします。
じゃあそのままお願いします。
はい、素晴らしいプレゼンテーションありがとうございました。質問があります。はい。私はウェブ制作会社で働いています。そこでは、3D のコンテンツだったり、リッチなアニメーションだったり、面白いグラフィックを表現することがあります。そのようなものは技術的にアクセシビリティを考えることが難しいのですが、そのような技術的な課題に対して我々はどのように立ち向かっていくべきでしょうか。
So for 3D and moving images, it can be difficult to make things accessible. However, you can describe what is happening, right? So that is one way to make things accessible, and also providing a transcript of what is happening. So for example, if somebody is watching a movie on Netflix and they are blind or low vision and it's a Netflix original, then they can turn on audio description, right? And what that will do is that will describe what is happening in addition to them hearing the dialogue. So whatever it is that you're creating in 3D, similar to what you would do for any type of image, you would add alternative text, but if it's something that's moving, then you could describe that and also provide a transcript so people can understand what it is. That's just one way, but it can be difficult to make 3D things accessible. I hope that answers your question.
りがとうございます。
Yeah, thank you.
はい、ありがとうございます。結構言語の切り替えを忘れてしまうんですね。はい、2人目じゃあ、お願いいたします。どちらでも。英語で。はい、お願いします。
So thank you for your great presentation. And I'm Rintaro from NRI and the Nomura Research Institute. And so you mentioned about the VR device from Apple. And I think for producing that sort of devices, maybe the designer or like engineer need to think about the web accessibility and also the hardware's accessibility. And so are there any differences between considering two types of accessibility and what kind of unique or particular differences and designers are actually facing?
Yeah, so one of the challenges that comes along with accessibility is the knowledge gap that people tend to have. At the end of the day, accessibility is options, and it's offering those options and making them available, right? I am somebody who always watches movies with the captions, in part because I am starting to have hearing issues and I don't fully understand, but I can read it, right? And that's an option that is provided to me from the provider. So when someone is creating something, anything, you have to think anyone could access this. They may be able to see, they may be, maybe they can't see. They maybe can hear, maybe not. Maybe they have mobility, maybe they don't. How are you providing those options for them to do the thing, to reach their goal? So when it comes to, for example, the Apple product that relies heavily on eye tracking, what does that mean for someone who has low vision or blindness? It's not maybe as effective. However, there's a voice component, so the voice could be used, right? So there are options. And at the end of the day, you all have to think about the options that you are providing. Now, are you going to make something that's good for everybody? No, it's not realistic, right? It's like I tell my students, I can't make you happy in this classroom. Happiness is an inside job. You're not going to make everyone happy. However, you want to get as close as possible by providing as many options as you can to think about who could be accessing this experience, who might be accessing this product. I hope that answers your question. Okay.
はい、あともう一方、帽子をかぶってる彼ですね。はい。じゃあ、日本語で。はい。
Also, I just want to add to your point. There are a lot of good examples of what can be done in gaming. In particular, The Last of Us has some great accessibility features. It's like the best. So there are ways to make experiences more accessible, and gaming does a good job of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. 素晴らしいプレゼンテーションありがとうございました。あなたの本も早速買って読んでいます。質問なんですけれど、インクルーシブデザインと社会環境の関係についてちょっと質問させてください。結構、欧米だとそもそも人権に対する意識っていうのがベースが結構高い位置にあると思うんですね。で、それと比べて日本のこの社会っていうのは、お世辞にもあんまりその人権意識っていうのが、それほど根付いているとは言えないと、思っています。で、そういった中でインクルーシブデザインというものを進めていこうとすると、やっぱりなんとなくその優しさであるとか、思いやりとかっていったところ、言ってみればそのボランティア精神みたいなところにどうしても回収されてしまうという状況が往々にしてあると思います。で、そんな中で、自分の、僕の仕事はフロントエンドのエンジニアを、ウェブのエンジニアをしているんですけれども、そういった環境の中で、時にはその自分のそういった仕事をビジネス上の役職を超えて、もっと直接的に社会とか、政治とかに訴えかけていく必要があるんじゃないかなと考えているんですけど、 そういった社会環境と、そういったこういったインクルーシブデザインの取り組みについてのもしご意見とかあったら聞かせていただきたいなと思っています。
So, yeah, I mean, I think that accessibility is a social issue. Like I said, ableism, I like to explain that in the very beginning because that is at the heart of why we are not accessible, is because we do live, and I don't care what culture you are from, whether it's American or Japanese, because we live in an ableist society. Right? That is regardless of culture. I've seen it because oftentimes you don't actually even see people with disabilities, nor do you interact with them. This is in almost every culture. And so because of that, there has to be a different way of thinking, of approaching things. Again, in my opinion, we need to change things. Because the thing is, for me, one reason I started looking at researching accessibility in augmented reality and virtual reality is because I really like to play VR games, okay? And I want to play those games when I get older. And I started thinking, can I? And then I started thinking about how is it possible? And one day I was talking to a friend who's blind, and I was talking to him about playing Pokemon Go. And he said, I want to play. And then I thought, why can't he play? Because he can't see, he can't play. That's not right. And so that kind of got me on the road to thinking about it. We have to make the change, even when it's small, even when we're within an organization. So I can only speak to you from my own experience, okay? So when I first got into accessibility, when I get into things, I get very into them. Like I'm very into Beyonce. I went and saw her a few weeks ago. Like I'm very into something. And so I really got into accessibility to the point I was working for an organization and I put together an entire packet that no one asked for of accessibility rules. I made it for the design team. I made it for the UX team. I made it for the developers. Again, no one asked for it, but I put it together and I gave it to people and people actually used it. Now, this isn't something that I'm saying to go and do, but what I am saying is in order to facilitate change, we have to be the ones to do it. And I don't think that it needs to be done in a grand way or a big way. I think it could be small things. Have we checked the colors to make sure they're good? You know, maybe we shouldn't use that 12 font size. Please stop using 12. Like up it, you know, again, especially for folks who wear glasses, like. So I think, again, making these little changes go a long way. When I think of incorporating accessibility into like work, I think of a brick building. If you look at a brick building, you don't just get a bunch of bricks and throw them, right? You don't do this. You get the brick and you lay it. And before you know it, you'll have a building. And I think if each and every one of us can start to incorporate little things, we can make something big and we can make things more accessible. It is a big issue. It's not one thing, it is layered, to your point. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
はい、ありがとうございます。では、オンラインで何か質問が来ていますか？では、スタッフのケンジさん。
このマイクは入ってるかな？いきません。Maybe English. So, one question from Zoom attendee, a question from a screen reader user. And so let me translate. I have a question about your book, ebook, Japanese version of your ebook, and VoiceOver doesn't work with Kindle. And apparently there's a PDF version on Mynavi website, which is a Japanese publisher that you work with. And he wants to make sure that that's the PDF version accessible and work with VoiceOver.
Okay, I am going to have to check into that. And if you could leave your email, if they could leave their email and I can get it, I will make sure to respond.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll text that in the chat.
Thank you so much. I don't have the answer, but I will find out.
はい、他にはないですかね、オンラインからは。はい、ありがとうございます。では、ちょうどいい時間になってきましたので、ではここで、プレゼンテーション、そして Q&A については一旦クローズとさせていただきます。レジネさん、今日本当にありがとうございました。